in that, but that, we don't need really 300 pages, so just kind of synopsis is good.
Yes, sir. I will make sure I take care of that. Good morning, members of council administration. Come before you this morning to seek your adoption of the required 5-year update to our county's multi-jurisdictional hazard mitigation plan. As Mr. Vincent alluded to, you have a copy of the entire plan in your package. You also have a 1-page brief synopsis of what the plan is all about. I'm just going to take a few minutes and run through a few slides to help reinforce that. And then once we get done that, then answer any questions you have, and then hopefully we can move forward with adopting this. So the purpose of the multi-jurisdictional hazard mitigation plan is to continue to provide guidance for hazard mitigation in Sussex County. It identifies hazard mitigation's goals, objectives, and recommended actions and initiatives for county and jurisdictional governments to reduce injury and damage. We include all the local jurisdictions within the county, all the towns. We engage them and ask them to participate. And much like the discussion previous to mine, instead of each individual town having its own individual plan, if they become part of our county plan, then it folds into it, and it makes things a lot more seamless and works better. The plan update keeps Sussex County qualified to obtain all disaster assistance, including all categories of public assistance, individual assistance, and hazard mitigation grants available through the Robert T. Stafford Disaster Relief and Emergency Assistance Acts. For instance, some people may want to try to elevate their homes. Some people may like to retrofit their businesses or homes with flood devices. Flood's typically the biggest one we deal with. But if this plan is not in place, then those people do not get to take advantage of any grants that are out there, because we have to have an approved plan in place for anyone to be eligible. The plan organization parallels the structure provided in the final rule of Title 44, Code of Federal Regulations, Part 201, Mitigation Planning, and each section of the plan we identified where that plays in so that it's readily out there and it's identified. Here's a list of the participating jurisdictions. You'll see all the towns, with the exception of 2, participated in the plan. We reached out several times to the 2 that did not participate via email, phone calls, and for whatever reason, we just never got any good responses. But the rest of the communities participated, and each one of those jurisdictions actually were interviewed individually, and they identified their own mitigation actions and goals, and that is incorporated. Each community has an annex to that, so we identified all those moving forward. Some of the things that were done from as far as the planning side: data collection, a wish list of desired information was provided. The Olson Group was the consultant that we hired. We actually were able to use federal grant money to pay the consultant. It was a 75-25% split. So they did the work and relayed to the participating jurisdictions through me, and a copy of the wish list is included in the plan. Critical infrastructure inventory. The Hazard Mitigation Working Group was provided spreadsheets with listings. It was reviewed, revisions were compiled, and the Olson Group also provided directions for capturing more detailed information regarding critical infrastructure and use of the plan. Things like hospitals, fire stations, police stations, public works, wastewater facilities. All these are critical facilities that, as we all know, during some of our storms and disasters, we have to maintain these in order to keep providing services. So that becomes part of the inventory. And then the jurisdictional stakeholder engagement. That's where I said we actually went out. The consultant met individually with every one of the jurisdictions. They identified how they planning efforts. They also identified what plans they currently have in place. And all that information was captured and put into the document as well. So risk assessment. So how do we come up with the list of things, the hazards that happen within the county? So the assessment determines several aspects of the risk hazards faced by the county. Natural hazards, which is predominantly the #1 thing we deal with. flooding, winter storms, coastal storms, nor'easters, those kind of things. How often these hazards impact Sussex County, the severity, the areas of the county that are likely affected. Obviously, coastal storms, hurricanes, nor'easters, we're looking predominantly at the coast for flooding. However, during these storms in the wintertime, we can have rain along the beaches and get several inches of snow on the western side of the county. So we have to be prepared to handle all those different aspects. Threats that may impact the county's assets, operation, people, and infrastructure. How private and commercial assets, procedures, and infrastructures may be affected by hazards. We know that we also have to look at this from an economical standpoint. If we can't get people to work, or if we can't get the businesses to open, that impacts the overall how we deliver services and how we get the community back on its feet. And the expected future losses if the risk is not mitigated. So all these things weigh out into the risk assessment when they come up with their list. Some of the additional documents that are used in the planning is the State of Delaware All Hazard Mitigation Plan. Each one of the 3 counties in the city of Wilmington has to do this plan, and it basically folds up into the state's All Hazard Mitigation Plan, which the state is currently updating theirs as well. National Flood Insurance Program, the FEMA Severe Repetitive Loss data, they compile a list of the severe repetitive loss, and what that means is how many times certain homeowners or businesses have had issues with flooding or whatever the case may be. The FEMA National Risk Index, the Delaware Department of Natural Resources and Environmental Control Flood Planning Tool, and the Flood Factor. So they look at all these different aspects, which is included in what the plan says. So how do we identify the hazards? Risk and vulnerability, we developed a problem statement for each hazard, and then considered the impacts of that hazard and how it would have an effect on life and property. And that's how they determine the ranking of the hazards as what we need to look at as the I'd almost say important ones, but the ones that we typically deal with. And we look at all hazards, not just natural hazards, but human-caused disasters as well as technological disasters. And here is the list of the hazards that were identified to most likely impact the county. As you can see, number 1 on the list is flooding. Number 2 is hurricane, straight-line wind, severe thunderstorms, drought, severe heat and cold. And then we get into the man-made hazards, hazmats. Then we go back to natural hazards, winter storms, tornado, hailstorm. Then we go back to terrorism, beach soil erosion, and then active shooter, cyber ransomware, dam level failure, cyber infrastructure, pipeline. So it covers all the possible hazards that could affect the county. And this is the ranking that was done by the folks, the jurisdictions, all the people that had a piece in this plan. And then based on all these, the risk and hazards, the strategy was developed. So we developed goals, objectives, and actions. Goals are general guidelines that explain what the county and the participating jurisdictions want to achieve. What do we want to come out of this plan? How do we want to make it happen? And then the policies as a course of action, and then the actions are the specific steps. So you have a 3-tiered process. So we have to develop the goals before we can even look at what the objectives are. And the objectives, the actions, come from the objectives. We come up with different ways to accomplish it. The Hazard Mitigation Steering Committee supported updating the goals, objectives, and mitigation actions. The mitigation actions address or solve local mitigation issues and problems. Therefore, the Sussex County Hazard Mitigation Steering Committee developed the following mission statement for the Sussex County All Hazard Mitigation Plan and the following goals for hazard mitigation for the next 5 years. Goal 1, and these are very broad goals. They're encompassing, so all the jurisdictions can try to strive to work towards this accomplishment. Sussex County and participating jurisdictions will continue to adopt enhanced stormwater management practices. Stormwater management has always been a big topic when we talk about this plan, just simply because that's a big effort. But the question is how sometimes that's a very, very ambiguous task, is controlling stormwater management. So Sussex County and participating jurisdictions will continue to adopt and enforce codes and regulations designed to reduce the impact of natural hazards. And like I said, once again, this is not just the county. These are the local jurisdictions, the towns that participated as well. The county and participating jurisdictions will continue to retrofit and protect critical facilities and infrastructure from natural hazards. The Sussex County and participating jurisdictions will continue to enhance education and outreach strategies to improve the dissemination of information to the public regarding hazards, including the steps that can be taken to reduce their impact. Sometimes it's important, just as important, to be able to provide people the right information so they understand what their capabilities are or what their needs are and requirements. And then Sussex County and participating jurisdictions will continue to improve pre-event planning and preparedness activities. We have to plan ahead. You always have to plan for the what-ifs. So preparedness is just as important. And then last but not least, Sussex County and participating jurisdictions will continue identifying and implementing sound hazard mitigation projects. And I believe that is it. So with that, I will answer any questions. I know I ran through those very quickly,
Any questions of the council?
Yes, sir.
Joe, I get asked occasionally, believe it or not, about evacuation plans. The county clearly has an evacuation plan.
So the evacuation plan, we identify evacuation in our county emergency operations plan. The actual moving of people, DelDOT has a very detailed traffic management for evacuation. So they handle the roads. As far as if we have to call for an evacuation, they will start manning checkpoints, putting people out on the street to make sure that the traffic flows. In our emergency operations plan, we have an evacuation map which shows the routes, as well as when we will announce or I shouldn't say mandate because we don't mandate, recommend to the governor's office that we evacuate, because that is the one key component is I cannot call an evacuation. The recommendation has to go up to the governor's office.
But just so the public's aware, the county absolutely has an evacuation.
Absolutely, sir. Yes.
Any more questions of the council?
I do.
Wait, Mr. Riley.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I was going to ask about the evacuation concept too, because we get questions about that pretty often. But the one thing I didn't see in here that I was kind of curious about is, I guess I read a book recently called 1 Second After, which was pretty disturbing. It described the potential impacts of an EMP attack, like electromagnetic pulse attack. And my understanding is federal government's hardening some of their critical facilities right now and against that sort of thing. And I just wondered do we have any plan to harden facilities to be able to survive something of that nature?
EMP is a discussion that has come back to the forefront years and years ago, and unfortunately it's telling my age, but we used to talk about EMP quite a bit back in the Cold War era, and it kind of went away, but now it is starting to come back. So it was actually discussed with this group. You saw the list as far as what took precedence, so it was definitely discussed, but it is a subject out there that's starting to gain a lot of strength as we continue to live in the world we live in.
I could be prudent to consider hardening certain facilities against that possibility. And the other thing, and I spoke with our administrator about, our IT department's role in this too, because I see that as a huge vulnerability potentially. I want to just make sure that that's part of our disaster plan.
Well, as you saw in the listing, cyber, right. and that was identified. So it's definitely a discussion topic.
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah. And I was assured that that was part of the mix. So
yep.
That's good.
Any more questions of the council? Mr. Lawson.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Thomas, can you explain to council in a little more detail the expectation of our local jurisdictions related to the plan and their actual consideration of this plan and perhaps adoption thereof?
So what has to happen is that each individual town has to adopt the plan, just as I'm asking you to do today. because what happens is if they do not adopt this plan, if they submit any kind of mitigation projects, could be elevating a home, retrofitting some infrastructure within the town. If they do not have a adoption of this plan, then they are not eligible for that grant funding.
Is that federal and county and state?
So this is federal grant money that comes from the hazard mitigation grants, flood assistance grant program, any kind of federal grant money that's attached to mitigation. They're not eligible unless they have this plan
So you
approved.
have 3 municipalities now.
Two.
Two.
That we have, like I said, multiple times tried to reach out. Now, the question is that if they decide to adopt our plan, one of the big question marks is how FEMA will perceive that, since they were not listed as participating. But these other jurisdictions, all they have to do is adopt the plan and they'll be eligible for the grants. And we've had that happen in the past. Unfortunately, some of the local jurisdictions didn't adopt the plan, although they were part of it, and then they call me and want to know why they're not eligible. So, is that what you wanted me to explain?
Yes, and I wanted you to be made aware that towns inside your council districts will be contacted by Mr. Thomas to let them know that this has now been adopted, and now they need to do the same.
We are actually scheduled Thursday to have a call with them, a Teams meeting, virtual.
Because if memory served me right, we've had this issue before.
So this is, yes,
Where
every 5
somebody
years.
did not adopt the plan, and then there was an issue occurred in their jurisdiction, and then they had a problem.
That is exactly right.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
So
Any more
if they-
questions?
Can I-
Mr. Schaefer?
I'm sorry. So if they have an event and they haven't adopted the plan, they're not eligible.
So after every disaster, presidentially declared disaster, there is a percentage that of the overall money that's provided that goes towards disaster mitigation. If the plan is not in place, they're not eligible for that.
So that's a big deal.
So like I said, there's multiple grants that are attached to this plan.
Any more questions, Council? I'm going to assume you've got a motion.
Yes, sir, I do. Be it moved, the Sussex County Council adopt the FEMA-approved Sussex County Multi-Jurisdictional All-Hazard Mitigation Plan update in order to allow eligibility for future federal grants and disaster recovery programs.
Pleasure, Council.
So moved.
Motion, Mr. Schaefer.
Second.
Second, Mr. Hudson. Any questions on the motion? Take the vote, Mr. Schaefer.
Yes.
Mrs. Green.
Yes.
Mr. Riley.
Yes.
Mr. Hudson.
Yes.
I vote yes, motion carried. Thank you, sir. And I know you hire consultants, but still it's a lot of work on your staff and you and the consultants.
This has been going on since January.
I mean, I think, Tracy, can you hold up that, just to show the public what this, that's the document. It's very in-depth, it's very lengthy, and
And I will say this, now that you've adopted it officially, but we've been told by both FEMA and NEMA that this is one of the better plans they've seen from Region 3, which is the
Right.
Mid-Atlantic region that we're in. So that made me
very good.
feel good that the consultant did a good
Very
job.
good.
yes, but thank you for all that hard work.
Thank you.
The